Reisong Q6 tube preamp is what I call an attempt to build a Michelin star level amplifier on a budget. Now the logic goes like this. I once asked a chef if he could make me a cheesecake. You see, he worked in one of those high-end hotels and he's like expert level. Think about it. What a great idea, right? I can eat expensive cheesecake for cheap. Sure, he told me he had this 3-star Michelin recipe. I was like, hell yeah, man. I get to eat Michelin level food for cheap. But the problem is the ingredients were not exactly super cheap. Being the cheap ass I am, I thought to myself, what if I took that Michelin recipe and used the cheapest ingredients I can find and make that cheesecake? Will it still be 90%, 80% when compared to the one that uses the best ingredients? Surely, beyond audio, the law of diminishing returns must also apply to cheesecake. Well, that happened 3 years ago and I still have not made that cheesecake yet, so I will never know. So how does this Michelin star story relate to this Reisong Q6 tube preamp? Also, how does it relate to the thumbnail, copycat Marantz versus the real Marantz 7 tube preamp? Think of the legendary Marantz 7 as the Michelin star level amplifier. The Reisong Q6 advertises itself as using a circuit inspired by the Marantz 7. Not only that, they claim they have improved on the circuit. Now, unlike those fake Gucci bags that are 100% identical copies, which I think are unethical, the Reisong Q6 is not a 100% copy. You can tell because the Marantz 7 has 6 12AX7 while the Reisong has only 3. Whether that's okay with you is a debate in itself, right? Is it okay if I go to a restaurant, eat the lasagna, and notice they use crab to elevate the taste? I go home, I copy the idea, but I use fake crab. So, well, let me know what you think in the comments. But please keep it civilized and no politics, please. No comments like cheesecakes from China are evil, okay? If you find a Marantz 7 on the used market, they still sell for over $4,000. This Reisong is crazy. $300 USD before shipping and customs. Okay, so it has a great recipe, the Marantz 7 inspired circuit. But if you inspect it, you'll notice it doesn't use expensive components. Now remember the law of diminishing return. Despite using cheap components, will it still sound 90% compared to the real Marantz 7? Now for those of you who think, well, of course, because it uses a Marantz 7 inspired circuit, let me tell you a story. Here I have the Xiansheng tube preamp. It showed up on the used market one day, and I remember reading about it using the Marantz 7 inspired circuit. Naturally, I was curious and I rushed out to buy it. Paid $300 Canadian for it, and it even came with extra tubes. I remember I was so excited and I felt I got the deal of the century. Jackpot! Plugged it in and, okay, I guess you get what you pay for. Now if you go on AliExpress, you see a lot of this kind of gear. Amplifiers inspired by PassLab, by Krell. Heck man, check this one out. Does this look like a Macintosh 275 or what? The problem is if you decide to buy any one of these, you're pretty much rolling a dice, right? For me, they can say it's made of vibranium and it's currently on special at $299. Yeah, no thanks. I'm sure there are many hidden gems within all these so-called inspired design. Just I personally would not take that risk. So, why am I making this video? Remember, this channel is about me bringing you on my audio journey. Out of curiosity, I compared the Reisong Q6 against a real Marantz 7, and I thought some of you might be curious. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vintage has the original, legendary Marantz 7 in showroom condition. All original tubes with only a few hours of use. Mint enough to showcase in a museum. He almost never used it. This reminds me of the story of a guy who bought a Ferrari F40 car and put it in his living room. Now for those new to my channel, I give all my audio buddies nickname, so I dropped by Mr. Cantor's place to A/B test it because the Marantz 7 was at his home. So how did it sound? Is the Q6 almost as good as the original, or maybe even better than the original? After all, the original Marantz 7 was introduced 60 years ago with all the advancement in technology, don't be surprised this $300 preamp from today can outperform a legend from yesterday. Alright, today, my audio buddies, let's talk about it.
Tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade.
So before we start, this Reisong Q6 was sent to me by China Hi-Fi. If you are interested in getting one, give them a chance. Now there are two versions of this preamp. The one I got has the tube rectifier in the power supply. It's a bit more expensive. Now to A/B test the Reisong Q6 versus the Marantz 7, we use the full-cut Sopra 2 speakers, we use Siltec and transparent cables, and the power amp was my upcoming Galion Class A 15 watt solid state amp. Now the reason I brought it over was that it was a good match with the Reisong Q6. That's it. So we first start by listening to the Q6. The Q6 strength is that it has minimal rough edges. It sounds like a tube amp. It has air and a decent soundstage. Because of the minimal rough edges, it is very easy to listen to, and it also does everything pretty well. The key here is that it gives you that relaxed feeling where the aggressiveness is toned down, a bit like a tranquilizer gun. Not smooth enough that I would call it on the musical side, but there's a certain level of softness to it. The first time I powered up, I was shocked, and I was not expecting that from a $500 tube preamp. Well, $500 because you still have to include shipping. The preamp, although not really neutral, I would not say it's really colored because I don't feel any frequency exaggerated. Dynamics and instrument separation are all acceptable, even by my standards of living with $4,000 preamps all the time. It does resolve enough detail that you will not feel it sounding veiled, but the only thing, it is not the most refined. And if you compare it to higher end preamps, there's a slight glare and graininess. However, given its price, all is forgiven, right? Unless you're somebody who lives with $4,000 preamp all the time, you might not even notice that glare. If you do, you can always change the rectifier tube to a 6v6 tube, and it will clean it up significantly. Now, as I always say, when it comes to good value, just the price alone is not enough. The gear must be good enough. This preamp, despite its price, can easily pass the good enough level for my audio buddies and me. Now, a disclaimer in this test, I accidentally changed the rectifier tube to something better, new old stock. Now, the last time Mr. Kanta listened to the Q6 at my home, he found it a bit dull with the stock rectifier tube. This time, at his home, with the upgraded rectifier tube, he was quite impressed. He also echoed what I thought, given his price, okay? More than acceptable, and he noticed the same as me. The amp is very easy to listen to, and keep in mind, his reference preamp is the Audio Research Reference 6 SE, and that is around $14,000. And even then, he thought, yeah, this is okay. Now, when we powered up the Marantz 7, we noticed right away, okay guys, the Q6 sounds nothing like the Marantz 7. Despite being 60 years old, the Marantz 7 completely destroyed the competition. The Marantz 7, you can tell right away, it is all about that sweet vocal. Well, sadly, my sound demo today is not the best track to demonstrate that, but I recorded a sound demo for the two amps, and I used the TV to do it, so forgive me. Now, the Marantz 7 has a bigger and fatter bass, more refined, more fluid, more smoother, more detailed, and above all, more musical. You know, modern amps, there's so much going on that every single detail catches your attention. The breath of the singer, the pin dropping on the floor in the recording studio, the reverb from the skin of the drum. Well, you get my point. When I listen to the Marantz 7, everything is there, but nothing is there. Nothing in the sense, nothing is asking for my attention, except I'm drawn to that sweet mid-range, beautiful vocal. And it's been so long since I last heard a system with this kind of magic. No wonder the bloody preamp is still worth $4,000 on the used market. Fantastic. I have an audio buddy called Mr. Manapan, and he borrowed this Q6 for a month, and I had to go get it back from him. Now, usually when something is good, I have to go get it back. When something is just okay, they bring it back themselves, and usually pretty fast. Now, Mr. Manapan paired this Q6 with his Class CD 200, which is a Class D amp, 200 watt, and for him, the combo was smooth enough that he really enjoyed it with the Manapan. Now, the only reason he did not buy it is because he wished it was a bit more refined. Now, maybe if he changed the rectifier tube, it would change his mind. Now, I tried tube rolling. I changed the 3 12AX7 to Galion tubes, so I got more bass and it was warmer. That was my favorite. The stock tubes, JJ tubes, yeah, they're pretty good. For the A/B test, we did use the JJ tubes, but remember, for the A/B test, the rectifier tube was not stock. It did make the system less grainy, but a little bit more livelier. The downside is I heard more imperfections from this preamp. Well, so that's pros and cons to tube rolling. After all, the amp does not use the most expensive part to build. But there are many possibilities with the tube rolling. With TAD 7025 tubes, I got more clarity. And all this is part of the fun of owning a tube preamp. So in short, this preamp sounds nothing like a real Marantz 7. But for 500 bucks, it is still worth looking at. Does not sound like a shit Freya. So if you buy this amp, you're going for a more rounder sound, a bit more tubish, not as clean or refined, but for me, a bit more musical. So what about the negatives? Like all things bought in Asia, you have to figure out how the warranty works. Well, for the price, you can't really criticize the sound, but you have to still be realistic in your expectation. For example, it doesn't have the lowest noise floor, but it's okay once you are 3 feet away. It does not come with a remote, and I don't know why they even bother making that light bar in the front. I think it's just pointless. Sure, you can change color, but yeah, whatever. Alright, so let's wrap up the video at this point. So I would say this amp is a Michelin star recipe, but built with not expensive parts. What would happen if you start using quality parts? What if I change the 50 cents capacitors to $30 capacitors? I tried it, and yeah, it changed the sound. For example, it was more fluid and more detail if I touch the two capacitors at the back closer to the back of the amplifier. Online, I found someone else with the same crazy idea. So what they did, they modified it by putting these like speaker terminals type of connectors, and you can just change capacitors like that. So I know the Musical Paradise MP301 has the same idea, and this allows you to just swap capacitors to change the sound. Alright guys, I hope today's video was entertaining, and if yes, please give me a like, and I'll see you next time.
I never think